Warning, the following video contains opinions that are mine and not anyone else's. All viewers of Banditex are encouraged to form their own opinion and to not follow mine directly. Growing up in the 2000s, I was a Cartoon Network kid, but while I loved cartoons like Ed, Edd n Eddy and The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, they didn't even come close to the like and respect, or lispect, that I had for Nickelodeon's SpongeBob SquarePants. Now, SpongeBob is a cartoon that I know needs no introduction. Starting in 1999, this cartoon featuring a naive sea sponge that flipped burgers for a living, caught jellyfish in nets, knew karate, wrecked car boats, and was best friends with the dumb starfish captured the hearts of many once it premiered. I think this is the best cartoon Nickelodeon has their name on. It's not just the nostalgia talking, the show is absurdly funny at points. I haven't really seen the show lately, I've been preoccupied with other shows, but the first 3 seasons are simply platinum tier. At least for a cartoon aimed at all ages. The show is still going strong and even has 3 films and 2 spin-off shows, with people young and old loving the show all the same. With a show as popular as this one, there's bound to be video games. In fact, there's one slated to release sometime this year, The Cosmic Shake. Growing up, I had tons of these. My favorite was, you guessed it, Battle for Bikini Bottom on PS2. But I also had 4 on the GBA and the movie game on Xbox. That's not even covering rentals or games that I played while visiting other people. It's safe to say that I know my SpongeBob games. I love just about all these SpongeBob games, and there's even more beyond those. But before I can dig into a game as legendary as Battle for Bikini Bottom, I want to go back to the very beginning. Back on the Game Boy Color in 2001, we got Legend of the Lost Spatula. While not the first time SpongeBob appeared in a video game, that honor going to Nicktoons Racing, this was the first ever SpongeBob game. This game was made by Vicarious Visions, which is a company I cannot get away from. They made a lot of the handheld SpongeBob games I owned, and they even did a lot of Crash Bandicoot games as well, 6 to be exact. Today we're going to see how the first ever SpongeBob game fares in the present day. SpongeBob has had a pretty good track record for video games, so it'll be fun to see how this one compares to all the later ones. Legend of the Lost Spatula sees SpongeBob discovering a strange statue while riding around on his unicycle. SpongeBob then decides to tell his boss, Mr. Krabs, about it. The statue has the entrance to the underworld, where the Flying Dutchman and his legendary golden spatula are sealed. Mr. Krabs urges SpongeBob to go into the statue and obtain the spatula so he can become super rich, and SpongeBob sees an opportunity to become a better fry cook. The game makes a really good first impression, as you will be greeted by an awesome 8-bit rendition of the show's theme song upon starting the game. In fact, the devs went hard on this soundtrack, as a lot of it is great stuff. The songs themselves are all short, but this is still pretty badass for a Game Boy Color game. One song that I love is the menu theme, which is actually based off of Hello Blues, a song commonly played in the background of the show. Now that's sick. The game also looks really good for this console. It's worth noting that this is what I call a Type 2 Game Boy Color game. You see, some Game Boy Color games are shaped just like a standard Game Boy game, while others are perfectly square with a convex bump rather than a concave one. The latter ones will only work on a Game Boy Color or better system, so Legend of the Lost Spatula cannot be played on any of the original Game Boys or even Super Game Boy. Any attempts to do so will give you an error message, but since the original Game Boy isn't really worth owning, this shouldn't be an issue if you want to get this game. Back on track with the graphics, the characters may look a bit different from what you're used to, as the game looks a lot like Season 1 SpongeBob, which isn't a bad thing at all. There are minor graphical errors like Mr. Krabs having short eyes and Squidward's house missing its ears, but these are nitpicks. The in-game animations are nice too. We even get a few small nods to the cartoon like the bring it around town motion from Bubble Stand. The worlds are lifted directly from the cartoon and even minor characters like Bubble Bath show up as enemies here. The graphics and music are simply wonderful. Vicarious Visions did a superb job bringing this cartoon to the Game Boy Color. Upon starting the game, you're given a quick tutorial, and immediately I have something to bitch about. The controls. In this game, the B button jumps while the A button uses items. This may seem like a little thing, but usually the jump button is mapped to the A button, so what this ends up doing is messing with your brain. Ugh, look, that's me hitting the wrong button. I get that this is a SpongeBob game, and by extension, a kid's game, but if I had this at the age of 5, I would have hated it there too. Not only is the jump being mapped to be an issue, but SpongeBob has a really bad jump as well. For starters, he goes into a duck for a few frames, which makes the jump feel delayed. Once SpongeBob is off the ground, he shoots right up and flies back down at the same heavy speed. As a result, the platforming in this game becomes really annoying. Super Mario Bros. Nailed jumping controls in 1985, and yet this 2001 game failed to make jumping satisfying. As for the A button, SpongeBob gets a selection of items that he can use on his adventure. At the start, he can blow bubbles as an attack, which is a really bad move. The bubbles go up in a strange curve, so hitting enemies can be a pain. If you can land a hit, the enemies will then bolt off screen, but they will still damage SpongeBob should he touch them. Sometimes enemies will even get stuck in this state and just dart back and forth. Like, look at this guy here. He's no Dr. Embryo, but he's pretty damn close. SpongeBob can also obtain a net, which can catch small enemies like jellyfish and sea urchins, but not much else. For bigger enemies, you can throw Krabby Patties with the spatula or use the net gun from Sandy's rocket. These both run on ammo though, and while ammo is plentiful, one should still be cautious. Of the two, the net gun feels more effective, though the patties work on most enemies too. The golden rule is that if the net gun doesn't work, try patties, and vice versa. SpongeBob's health is represented by his trademark pants. Once he gets hit, he loses them and is left in his underwear. As you guessed, losing that means SpongeBob becomes nude and has to go back to the last checkpoint. I guess this counts as a death, but SpongeBob doesn't really die, he just has to run home and get a new pair. This game has no lives, so feel free to undress that sponge, you perverts. If you can find Mrs. Puff, you can obtain the Hall Monitor uniform to take an extra hit. Doing this will also allow you to find the rare Hall Monitor badges, which will instantly grant SpongeBob full health. Now that we understand how SpongeBob functions, let's actually dig into what we do in this game. This is a platformer where the main goal is to locate the legendary Lost Spatula. At the start of the game, you're tasked with going to Goo Lagoon to find a hidden treasure chest. Once you find that, you can then get a map that shows you where to go to grab the oven knobs required to open the statue. While all players are required to go to Goo Lagoon first, Jellyfish Fields, the Carnival, Desert, and the Kelpozoic Jungle can be explored in any order the player chooses. I want to spend some time talking about the game world itself. SpongeBob is a 2D cartoon series, and Vicarious Visions managed to turn the fictional Bikini Bottom into a somewhat believable world. Not only is it really neat seeing all these locations in the game, but there are plenty of set pieces that help prevent players from getting lost. Players are given a map that they can look at any time, but I don't think it was really needed. To navigate through Bikini Bottom and beyond, there are some extra items that SpongeBob can obtain to aid him. Most of these function as upgrades to SpongeBob's basic tools. To get these, you will have to talk to SpongeBob's friends once you start the Knob quest, who are all struggling with something. If you can help them, they will upgrade your items. For example, Patrick lost his pants at the carnival, but if you give them to him, he will give you a new net, which will slightly improve your range.
Dude, put that thing away! They're like children here!
These items are all completely optional. In fact, I missed a lot of these when I finished the game. The upgrades from Mr. Krabs and Sandy give you infinite ammo for the spatula and net guns respectively. There are also 2 more items that aren't attack related. First is the spring shoes, which just allow SpongeBob to jump higher. This item is found in the same cave as the big chest in Goo Lagoon, though if you miss this item and leave, you cannot grab it later. There are also X-ray glasses that Squidward drops if you give him the jellyfish hive, but I couldn't locate the hive, nor could I find a guide telling me where it was. This just lets you see inside treasure chests, which sometimes have nothing in them. The empty ones just say April Fools, which is funny at first, but gets old fast.
April Fools!
The whole quest isn't very long. It shouldn't take you more than 3 hours to finish this game. If for whatever reason you decide to shut the game off, the game uses a password save system. Anytime you pause the game, you're given a code that will take you back to the last place you started in. While I would have preferred a normal battery backup save, the password system isn't awful. Certain characters are removed to help avoid confusion for those that write these down, like A's and E's. While we're here, you can enter a few codes, one of which gives you every item, including the Power Ring item, which makes SpongeBob move faster, jump higher, gives him orange and green threads, and makes him invincible. I kind of wish this item was obtainable in the base game though, even if it is overpowered. The challenge is already pretty low, but since this is a SpongeBob video game, I'm okay with this. I'll take a longer and easier game over a shorter and frustrating one any day. Once SpongeBob collects the final knob, a cutscene is triggered and SpongeBob is immediately flung into rock bottom. If you were doing the optional side quests for the characters in the hub world and didn't get their rewards, then you're screwed, since there is no way back to Bikini Bottom. This isn't a huge deal, but I find it kind of dickish that they did this. The entrance to Rock Bottom is found in the desert, and they could have had a balloon carry you back to the desert, and by extension, the main map, but they didn't. That's quite a fuck up, Vicarious Visions. From here, the game becomes more of a standard 2D platformer. Just get to the end of every level and beat the Flying Dutchman. Once he's done and SpongeBob collects the golden spatula, that's it. Mr. Krabs becomes super rich, SpongeBob becomes the world's greatest fry cook, wasn't he already? And the game is over. The only bullet point I have ignored was the bosses, but honestly, there's little to say. They all have some item that you must use, but it won't take much thought to beat each one. The big jellyfish in Jellyfish Fields flies high, so use bubbles. The hot sauce bandit needs Krabby Patties, and for some reason the Flying Dutchman also needs patties, but he gives you a blatant clue, despite being the final boss. I like the Junglefish boss the most, since he needs bubbles, but you also have to shoot him with the net gun after a while. But that's the only boss that feels like it had some thought put into it. Let's be real, SpongeBob Legend of the Lost Spatula isn't great. The biggest offender here being the controls, as I feel like the game would have been better had SpongeBob been given a better jump, and if the devs simply swapped the buttons around. With that said, this game avoids the same pit that Space Cadet Adventures did by being far more charming and having a better understanding on how a kid's game should play out. Vicarious Visions made a good effort with SpongeBob's first ever video game, even if there are some glaring issues. I give Legend of the Lost Spatula a 6.5 out of 10. This is a pretty mediocre score overall, but it's apparent to me that Vicarious Visions did actually give a shit when they made this game. In fact, this actually has me excited to play future SpongeBob titles down the road, whether it's from them or from other companies. If you like SpongeBob, and I'm sure you do, then Legend of the Lost Spatula wouldn't hurt. You could do better, sure, but you can certainly do much worse than this. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Banditex. I'll catch you in the next one.